If you don't know me, I'm a big fan of the original Paper Mario on the Nintendo 64. Really, it's one of my favorite games of all time, and I usually end up playing through this game about once a year. The graphics are probably my favorite graphics of all time, and really, the story, gameplay, everything about the game, it just makes me so happy to play. And recently, I learned about a new game coming out that looks just like the original Paper Mario, and it really caught my attention instantly. And this game is the Outbound Ghost. I feel like this game really flew under some people's radars, mine included, because I didn't learn about the game until about a month ago. It was released September 20th of 2022 by an indie studio named Radical Games, who do have two other games published on Steam with Gearbox and Loopbox Life, which both have a little over 20 reviews. So Outbound Ghost is their biggest project yet, and you can see that in the game itself. The game actually had a very successful Kickstarter as well, where it got fully funded in 32 hours and ended up raising about $28,000 total in the 1 month period of funding back in 2021. Kickstarter page even tells how the game was inspired by Paper Mario, The Legend of Zelda, and Undertale. Paper Mario inspired the art style and storytelling, whereas The Legend of Zelda inspired the story writing style and even some of the puzzles, and then Undertale inspired it in terms of gameplay with the amount of variety. And in my short few hours of playing, I'll say there's a lot of variety, and it's one of the best single player games I've played this year. And a great thing about this game is how you can basically play it everywhere: Steam, Switch, Xbox, PlayStation, you name it. Oh, you can even get a physical copy according to their Twitter. But what's the game even about? What's the gameplay? Is it any fun? Is it addicting? Well, let's go over the story first before we go over the mechanics and all the other little secrets that you can find in the game, because I feel the story is pretty simple to cover. You play as a ghost who has amnesia, and you're trying to figure out the cause of your death. In your journey, you meet other murdered ghosts who haven't accepted death yet, and you help them come to terms with it and help them ascend. Really, that's about it for the story. I've only played for a few hours, as I was lucky enough to get a code early, and in those few hours I was able to get to chapter 2, and in chapter 1 there was a lot to learn. Let's go over the core gameplay before we talk about the combat, because I feel the combat can be talked about by itself, as it's probably the biggest selling point in the game because you'll be doing a lot of it. But the gameplay is still pretty simple overall. The game itself is somewhat open world, and the path you take is linear, but the game does hint at where you're supposed to go. But there are many side paths to take, which can lead you to getting a lot more items, and you want to get as many items as possible because they allow you to craft. The crafting plays a major role, as it allows you to craft items for these little ghost friends that you have called figments. You find these figments throughout the story from other characters, or you can find them from taking side paths and exploring. The figments can only be seen in combat though, so we won't really talk about them again until we cover fighting. But with crafting, you also find recipe sets throughout the game, which allow you to choose between two different sets of aspects to learn how to craft. Aspects are basically buffs for the figments. Now back to the world itself. It seems to be quite large. As you travel through different areas, you can pick up maps that will allow you to fast travel. And with fast traveling, it gives me the feeling that you might be backtracking a good amount in the game, which isn't a bad thing at all. But if you don't end up backtracking a lot, at least the fast travel makes it easy to be a completionist. To add on to the general exploring of the world, as the game goes on, you receive items that can be used outside of combat, like a shovel and a torch. Those are the two things I've gotten so far, and those can help you solve puzzles or dig up some extra items. Really, you want to grab as many items as you can because they are going to come in handy. Really, that's all the gameplay I can think of outside of combat. The graphics in the world are really well made, and it just feels pretty good going through. But honestly, the biggest thing to talk about with this game, I feel, is the combat that you do with the figments. All the fighting is turn-based, and you're allowed to have 4 figments in your party at a time, and each figment specializes in different abilities. Some are better at healing, some may have more health, so they can be used as tanks to protect others. Some do more damage. I don't know how many different figments there are, but they all seem to be named after different emotions. And about 3 hours in, I have 6 figments total, which means 2 of them are sitting out. But honestly, having the figments not in the party is not a big deal, because after every battle, every single figment you have gains XP regardless if they were in the party or not, and they all level up equally, meaning whenever you find a figment, they will automatically be whatever level you are, which is very nice because then you don't need to worry about having any of them be over or under leveled. With that, every few levels the figments may also learn a new move that takes SP, which is just special points, and the special points and health reset back to full after every battle. You don't even need to worry about leveling up their skills, as the game does it for you. I'll say the combat goes by pretty fast, and you might even find yourself fighting an enemy that's a higher level than you. I know I did at a few points in my few hours of playing. I got destroyed by some enemies, but it wasn't really too frustrating because if you do lose a fight, the options are all so simple. You can reset back to your latest save, which by the way, I forgot to mention in gameplay, but the only way to save this game is by going up to a fireplace and saving, you know, like a classic game. But you find these fireplaces everywhere, so you don't really need to worry about not saving too much. But if you lose a fight, you go back to the latest fireplace. You don't lose any progress. You just have to walk back to wherever you were before. Or you can just reset the battle and try again and lose nothing, which may be the smart option, because then you can just run away from the battle if you have a smoke bomb item. The combat can be explained much deeper, I feel like, but I did a good job at telling you all the basics really. What else do you need to know? It's turn-based combat, the Figments have special points and health that reset after every single battle. What more do you need? I guess there's one more thing I can tell you about, which is the stun meter. You see, the stun meter is the yellow bar under all the enemies. If it maxes out, the enemy is stunned for a turn, and they end up taking more damage. So it's good to focus on one enemy at a time in a fight with multiple enemies, since after every turn, that stun meter goes down slightly. Really, this game is incredible. If you're a fan of any of the inspirations, Undertale, Legend of Zelda, Paper Mario, I highly suggest giving this game an honest shot. It reminds me mostly of Paper Mario so far, and it's amazing. The graphics are so refreshing, and the gameplay is very relaxing. I could see myself beating this game once, and hell, if I like it the way I do now, by the end, I may 100% it or do a second playthrough down the line. Really, I'm usually one and done with these types of games, but I can't think of anything negative off the top of my head that brings this game down. The only negative thing I've encountered was not being able to change my character's name on the name selection screen. The keyboard and controller both did not pick up, so I was stuck using the stock name of Bun, which isn't even a bad name. Oh, another great positive about this game that I didn't even talk about was all the options. This game has so many options to tune the difficulty to your liking. Enemies doing more damage, the game being easier. You can randomize the settings all you want after you beat the game, so you can do the story in any way you want. Oh, you can randomize it if you've never even played the game. It's really great. Combat is simple, rewarding, and fun. The graphics are amazing. The story's deeper than you think. It has a lot of settings to make the game more enjoyable the way you want it. You can make it harder, easier, and all for a solid $20. I feel you easily get your money's worth on this game. Personally, I'm very happy I learned about this game, and I'm very excited to see where the story goes as a whole as I unlock more Figments. Thank you again, developers, for sending me a copy of this game early. I'm sure you wanted me to get further than Chapter 1 for a review like this, but I feel I did a pretty good job covering all the basics and everything you needed to know. I didn't want to spoil the game, and I didn't want to play too much of it off stream, of course. It felt like a good game to play on Twitch. And of course, thank you for watching this video, and a huge shout out to the people that support me on Patreon. Appreciate the patience as always, as I'm one guy making all these videos on whatever games I want, when I want. Not the best way to grow, I know, but it's what I want to do. Appreciate the support on this platform, of course, Patreon and Twitch, everywhere. Appreciate it a lot, and I'll see you next time.